All right, hi guys, welcome. I've moved. I'm in Philadelphia now. Been busy, but I wanted to do this today so I had a little time, and I wanted to recap things. Just so you know, for those in the power trading room, I had a little bit of an emergency midday. It kind of affected my trading, and that's why I wasn't posting very much. But I'm still gonna give you my perspective and what I thought, what my perspective was, what I did well, what I didn't do well, and we'll kind of do the thing. Okay. So just remember going into this is the setup going into the day. So we've been in this sort of 37 before today, 3750 was great. This to about like the 3900, 39. That's been our trading range for about a month since last OpEx. Yeah, some people might say like, oh, this is a double top. Well, like you can't really read it like that because I would prefer a double top if we were in an uptrend, but this is part of a downtrend. Plus, you could argue we're making a triangle. The various ways you can look at it that are, whether you're biased, whether you say like, oh, this is bullish, but really, I don't really focus on all that. You see, I pretty much only have horizontal lines, very few diagonal lines, that kind of thing. So there's nothing really to read this except for this 3750 to 3900, 3950 range. That's really the only read you can get into this. But let's zoom in and see what we got to work with. So if you recall, yesterday we dropped heavy into the yesterday, if you recall, or 2 days ago, we dropped heavily into the close, into CPI, dumped on CPI, rallied, and kind of failed into the closed at 3,800. So going into today, we had what do we have, like PPI, bank earnings. We had stuff, unemployment. We had stuff pre-market, and really what happened was we just kind of drifted from the 3,820, 3,800 close all the way down, and then we opened. I think we opened like right here. We opened at 3750, right at my sort of this line was orange previously, but my major support zone, that's been holding. And literally, and when we open here, I'm not looking to get puts. The puts were mad expensive. On this down move, you didn't even get a double. This 25, you didn't even get a double. But yeah, I wasn't looking to buy puts, not looking to buy calls either yet, because I want to have good bottom action, but I wasn't going to look to get puts here, and then we dropped to sort of the next area, which is the 3,700, 3,725. This is important because if you go back, the Monday after June OpEx, we closed previously like 3675, and then we gapped up 3,700. We never looked back. So this was a big zone. Also, like if you believe in all the hedges and spot gamma and all the stuff that I can't really explain as well, this was sort of that put wall, the line in the sand, basically, of it would be almost not impossible, but it would be really hard, especially with the monthly OpEx this week, to get past this. So when we hit 3750 and we broke below it, my rule is always don't buy puts at support, don't buy puts even near support, like, even if it looks like we're breaking. So in my head, I'm like, man, it's going to be one of those crazy trend days where we dump probably below 3,700, but that wasn't really likely in my book, given all the dynamics, the bad CPI, bad bank earnings, and we opened right at yesterday's lows, and we were, even at the lows, we were barely 20, 25 points below that. So all this bad news, and we're not that much lower, and we're going into an OpEx where maybe hedges and puts need to come off. Yeah, XLF was down, VIX was up, but not up crazy. See, compared to was it yesterday? Like we never even made highs of yesterday past, even though we were lower on the VIX. We'll get to the DAX in a minute. In the morning, the DXY surged, and I was just like, wow, this is insane. But then around 10 o'clock, it started doing like, if you watch like a squeeze or anything, and I'm not saying that applies to currency because I don't know currency like that, but if we were treating this as a stock, this is a crazy kind of topping, at least temporary, like, oh, this was like a phew, and so crazy. So basically all my indicators were kind of aligning, yeah, we had the DXY up, but then it started coming down, the bonds were kind of tame, not doing much. Even the DAX was coming back a little bit. Obviously XLF was bad, but it wasn't getting worse. And the VIX, again, didn't even make yesterday's highs and was slowly coming down. So when we got here, I was thinking like, man, we could be set up. And oh yeah, the Nasdaq was strong. Apple was strong. Relative strength on tech. And I was like, well, maybe we could rally today. I'm not, but we're still below this my major spots. I'm never looking to get calls here, because for all we know, we could hit 3,700 before anything happens. But once we got to around 10:30, 11, if you look here, this is kind of an inverse head and shoulder look, especially on Nasdaq. Here it was not as clean, but this was pretty clean. And I forget exactly when. I think it was right around here when the shoulder of the Nasdaq was turning, and all my other indicators that I pointed out were kind of aligning. And I'm like, man. So I got the 3765 calls, and at that point, those in the power trading room, I was saying, you know what? Given all this bad news, and we're basically barely below yesterday's lows, maybe coming back to it, we could fill this gap. I was like, we could see 3,800. I don't, I had a level at 3775, which I think was right. I was just like, how the market works on these big gap downs. If we can go green, we can, or not go green, but if we can, reverse higher from the open, we could, try to go green. So when we had this great move, again, with all my indicators. And here's where I kind of made a mistake. I was convinced of 3,800. So I was like, I'm not selling here. I'm just gonna keep holding. And also, I think I mentioned I had a phone call with my girlfriend. I won't get into details, but kind of an emergency situation. So I was kind of distracted. But and then I knew during the middle of the day, during lunch hour, the market either kind of chops or it's not going to move much in the especially in the direction you want, which is the upside. But I really didn't expect this deep of a cut. Maybe it was the Draghi resignation or potential resignation news. But I was hoping for, okay, we get here, we kind of hold right here, kind of like where this candle is, and then in previous days it would do something like that. I wasn't really expect this deep cut, and so part of it was I was a little distracted. Part of it was I should have just sold here at this first resistance level. Knew that, oh hey, we're going to lunchtime, we're probably going to chop. I could either roll or get it cheaper. So I kind of messed up here. I know some people sold, a lot of people sold up here, so that's good. And then when we got to here, you're retesting, we had a false breakdown, we broke higher, we're testing it, we broke below, we broke above, now we're testing it from above one last time. It kind of was about to fake you out if you thought that we were going to fail again, and then we bounced. And then here, this candle right here, probably if I had been paying attention on the phone, was probably a good entry. I know some people got in around this area, but you can kind of see like a little inverse head and shoulder again. We held this level again, and then, basically, oh hey, 3,800 is back in play. And also, I had a comparison to, let's go to July 5th. We kind of had a similar action. Not quite the same. Basically, what I want to compare is, around, late morning, we started the rally, but really the bulk of the rally, if you look, we had the initial push and then we had this drop, just like today, an initial push and then a drop. But really, the real surge was between about 1 to 2:33 p.m. Here we rallied about 50 points in 2 hours. This was the move you wanted. So I kind of, again, I was on the phone, but I mentioned to some people that 1 to 3 p.m., again, I made the mistake of just trying to hold through this, which kind of messed me up. The ideal thing was sell this, avoid the lunchtime chop and drop, and then look, 115 to 240, and look here, right here. What is this last candle was 235, and then that move ended at 240. Look right here. 235, 240. Like sometimes I don't know why these times happen. I kind of do, but not enough to explain it. But this was a great move. And then, so, you could have gotten the 37.75s, the 37.80s, they went 3 to 4x. And then when we got to around 243, I'm always looking for that 3 p.m. drop and rally, I was like, man, if we get energy, and I was thinking like, okay, maybe we drop back to where we kind of broke up. We dropped to 37.75, it'd be a great place to get calls for 3,800. But what we ended up doing, if you followed me before, I like that quick drop, hold, and push. But what we had here was it kind of chopped. It wasn't really a big drop, and it kind of chopped. And I was telling some people that were messaging me who thought like, oh, should I get the 3,800 calls? And I was like, no, I'm not really feeling it today. If we dropped here and then, I'd get like the 37.85s or the 90s to play for 3,800, but I'm like, I don't really see it, especially remember, oops, wrong day. Remember, we had the gap fill level at 3,800, so that was kind of my target. Maybe 3,820 because that was a resistance, but I just didn't see it today. And also another key thing. So here, when the S&P or the ES tried to kind of almost make like another high, the Nasdaq was kind of lagging. Remember earlier in the day, the Nasdaq was stronger because the banks were bringing us down and stuff. Here, the Nasdaq was actually relatively weaker than it was earlier, and I'm like, well, that's not a good signal. But the point is when I'm looking for that 3 p.m. drop and pop on a red to green, or not red to green, but a red to big rally kind of day, I'm looking, and if you've seen my past video, I'm looking for a nice pop, 2 to 4 candles of red almost in a row, and then rally. This was too choppy, and as I told people, some people who were messaging me since I was kind of busy, so I was trying to provide commentary while I was on the phone. I wasn't really feeling the 3,800. So that's kind of where we were at today. It was just everyone was so bearish down here, and I'm like, people were like, oh my gosh, CPI, banks. Oh, and I forgot one thing. One other thing that happened is after CPI yesterday, the Fed, the Fed Fund Watch for the next Fed meeting, people were saying like, oh, they were betting that we had a 90% chance that we were going to raise by 100 in July. But then over the course of this morning, that dropped to like 50-50. And a couple of Fed speakers came out that were saying like, oh, we're still thinking 75. We'll look at the data, but pretty much even like Bullard, who's one of the maybe the most hawkish Fed member, he was even saying 75. So really, like if you take the entire big picture, a lot of bad news this week. We couldn't really break this major support level. We kind of, we bear trapped and then broke higher. The Fed, I wouldn't really call it a pivot, but given that expectations a day ago was like, oh my gosh, 100-point hike, the world is ending, to 75 still probably the what's going to happen, which was funny. Which yesterday when the CPI came out, I was like, everyone's assuming 100. I don't think so. To me, it made more sense to keep it at 75, which is still very hawkish. And then if the data still doesn't get better in September, you can decide what to do. Makes sense to me. And we all know that this Fed is kind of slow and doesn't like to overreact, or maybe it should overreact, but it doesn't. So after so even the news events went from really the context was some of the news events were really bad, but the action didn't support really bad action. And then some of the bad news with the Fed got a little better. So that context plus this price action and using the levels is what basically convinced me around 10, 11 o'clock that hey, 3,800 is possible, which I guarantee you pretty much no one else had. If someone else said it, they probably were just talking out of their ass. I actually, if you're in the power team, I actually gave specific reasons like the ones I just told you. All these reasons, I probably just gave you 5, 6, 7 reasons, all aligned for why, okay, we're not breaking lower. If we can just get a push and then hold into monthly OPEX, we can get a lot of these hedges to come off. So that's that. And then setting up into tomorrow, just a quick update on that. We closed at what, right around 3,800 where we closed, 37.90. Honestly, I have no idea at this point, and I say this a lot, but we're still in this 3,700, 3,750, 3,900 range. Tomorrow's monthly OPEX, and I actually purposely timed. I knew one day in the next week or two I had to be away. I purposely picked tomorrow because monthly OPEX, if you don't know already, the premiums will be higher. Whether it's SPX on the daily, whatever ticker, all the premiums will be higher because everyone's like, oh, make a big deal of this monthly OPEX. Crazy shit's gonna happen, so they price it higher. And typically, I struggle to make money on it. Not only is the action tricky because of the premiums, I found that even I get sucked into some of the, oh, it's OpEx, things are gonna happen. And basically my track record on the monthly OpEx days is not great. I think June, we had an okay move. I remember May, we had that crazy like 100, not 100, like 75-point rally in the last hour. So, there's always possible. And, I'll try to be the beginning and the end, but that's also why I kind of picked tomorrow. I was like, there's any day to screw up, it's going to be tomorrow. So I might as well just save myself. But anyway, we're at about 3,800. So honestly, I think there's a lot of calls and puts, a lot of positioning at 3,800 going into today and tomorrow. So I would not be shocked if we pinned or we didn't stay straight too far from 3,800 going into tomorrow. As for next week, I have no idea. But I could see it play a number of ways. We could either drop to like 37.75 either before the open or after the open, and then kind of rally, and you can maybe play a move there. Or maybe we could pop open, 38.20, fake people out, and then drop to 3,800 or 37.50. I'm not, again, I don't like making predictions. I'm just giving you some scenarios to think about. I have no idea. Maybe we see a day two and we rally like crazy. I don't. That's not high on my list. Or maybe we dump because with this bear market, we've had this thing of if we close on the highs or we close really well, next day either we gap down, or if we don't gap down, we kind of dump off the open. So I'm really open, but again, it could just chop or pin. So tomorrow's a day where I would say, if not avoid, just be really careful. If you see a setup, you better be darn sure, it better look great. All your indicators better be aligned, and the premium, remember, it's going to be expensive. So you got to, on a different day, your great setup may be a 3x or a 4x, but because the premium is expensive, it's only going to be a 2x. So again, just be very careful tomorrow. Anyone have any quick questions in chat or want to raise their hand? I'll take a few quick questions, but other than that, I'm going to, oh, someone has a question. Type out your question or raise your hand, and I will do the thing and unmute you. Okay, Joe. Okay, unmute yourself, Joe. Joe, I just gave you the unmute power. You have to unmute yourself. Can't do it for you.
What?
Oh, there you go. Hold on, maybe my sound's not up. It's up there. My sound's not up. Go ahead. Did I lose him? Did he? I don't see Joe anymore. Did he just get? Damn. Okay, I'll give him a couple minutes. But anyone else have any questions? Raise your hand. Type your message. I'll try to wait for Joe for 2 minutes. Maybe he has to get back in. But other than that, that's all I have to say. Oh, wait, I got a hand. Steve. Okay, Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. So I know you were on the phone and kind of dealing with some personal stuff, but if you had not been, and maybe you said this and I missed this, but if you'd been kind of like zoned in and focused, would you have sold that rip to over 70? I think we got to like ES 73 or so.
So yeah, so in looking back at my trading, I always try to analyze what I did right or wrong. I think the proper move, especially in a bear market where, you can't trust anything. I think the proper move would have been to sell this, especially going into the lunch hour where, not much is usually going to, even on the crazy reversal days, back during the bull market, you always have this lunchtime chop. So I think, yeah, the right move would have been to sell as we approached here and then reassess in the afternoon. Anything else, Steve? You good? Okay. Sony has a question. Is there any books you suggest to get better at trading? Honestly, for what I do now, there may be books in general about trading and stuff, but honestly, I'm pretty self-taught. I learned by trial and error. I don't have like a book. The best thing I can recommend is my webinars. At least when it comes to like weekly options or SPX options, my advice is helpful for a lot of other things, stocks and common, and you can apply certain things. And there are books that may help you, but a lot of what people teach either online or books, it's either outdated or just plainly doesn't work. I always talk on many of my webinars like, this doesn't work, this indicator's crap, Elliott wave, whatever rising, the things, so many things people teach are crap, because the people like, me and other people who are actually pretty decent at this, we're just trying to make money. I'm not trying to sell books, Again, I'm not saying there aren't books out there, and if other people have books, feel free to recommend, or let me know and I'll kind of screen it. But unfortunately, I don't have. I'm not a book person. I'm a learn, as you go, learn on the job, experience, experiment, fail, make mistakes, learn from the mistakes. That's kind of who I am. I could read books. I could read books about so many things, and until I put it into practice and try it out for myself, the books don't matter. Zara, I just gave you an opportunity to unmute. Hello?
Hello,
Yes.
my name is Jara.
Oh, Jared? Okay, sorry about that. You have a question?
Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna go to someone else. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyone else?
Yo, this Zoom is shit.
Hello? Okay, Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, how's it going, Gav? Hey,
Good, how about you?
really good. I've been watching like VX, UV, NQ. Those are kind of my main indicators for SPX.
Hmm.
What are you watching?
I'm sorry,
Like,
what am I watching?
Yeah, what do you correlate your SPX moves to, other than just the raw knowledge that you've gotten for like 10 years? Inverse, head and shoulders, chart types. Are there other indicators that you're watching?
Sure. Yeah. So my levels, which I spend time on every night and every morning, and yes, this should be like 80% of what it is. And here's why: because there are times, other indicators. I watch bonds, I watch other things, and I'll show again what I watch. They don't, for what I do, like intraday, 10-minute, 1 hour, 3-hour trade. Those bigger picture indicators are not correlated on such a minute short time. They may be correlated over like a few days or a week. So that's why I always say all those indicators, bonds, everything else will be incorporated into the ES price action. So I use the other indicators as more as, okay, this is what I'm seeing in the futures or the SPX, and all the other indicators are aligned. It's more of a confirmation or a negate kind of scenario than a, oh my gosh, bonds are rallying, or bonds are rallying, I have to buy or sell a put. But if that's, I don't really start from an indicator. It's more of, they're my backup, secondary, third level indicators. They're not my prime. I would never be like, oh my goodness, the VIX is rallying, I must buy a put. If the ES is not, if the actual price action of the index is not, incorporating that, there could be a number of reasons why another indicator could be moving. But I always have I have the SPX up. I don't really watch it. It's more of like, it reminds me, oh, hey, this is the gap fill, this was the high from yesterday. So it just reminds me of these levels that I usually will sell at. Like I always say, like a good sell level was like a gap fill or like the high of day. So I don't really watch the SPX, but this is what I have. This is what I usually have on. ES and NQ. I explained earlier how NASDAQ can be a good sort of helpful indicator, but really it's, my horizontal levels and such. I have the XLF and the VIX, again, helpful, but not the end all be all. I did explain earlier why these were, not so much XLF, but the VIX was aligned with this morning. And on a day when the XLF is down 2%, the fact that it dropped on the open, like with the ES, but then we never really made a further low. It kind of chopped, rallied. The fact that they stayed flat, if the NASDAQ rallies and other things rally, Home Depot was up, other non-financial sectors are rallying, that's fine. We can rally with a flat intraday XLF. I have the DAX open, which lately, especially with all the European stuff and Russian invasion in previous months and all the European issues, you know, the DAX is a good indicator. Look at this. DAX made a beautiful, you know, right here around like, yeah, this is 1 o'clock our time. That signaled that rally. And again, here, you know, around 11, that signaled another rally. So I have the DAX. I have the DXY, which I explained earlier, that how that was supporting a rally today. I have the 10-year, which I only really watch the 10-year and like the DXY for like big moves. Like, right, to me, this is all chop. It's like, you know, back, you know, a while ago when, look at this. This was when we dumped in the early mid part of June. Look at that. I pay attention to this move. I pay attention to, oh, hey, we're kind of reversing that move, you know, we're trending down. But like here, you know, I'm not really, you know, yeah, I think this was like the CPI. This was a little CPI kind of thing. But overall, you know, I'm not really paying attention to this because it's pretty much been chopping for about a week. And then I have oil, which oil only matters when it matters. Like for the most part, oil hasn't, you know, it's gone down, but it hasn't really been a good signal for anything for the most part. Again, I'm focusing on really big moves, or like when, you know, when there's like a Russian, you know, Russian invasion, or when, I don't know, it's not really a great indicator. That's why it's kind of the last part of my list. And then I have the HYG, the high yield bond index, which can, I have this on the daily, which I don't really use this as much for intraday, but it's more of like, hey, big picture, like, hey, you know, the high yield bonds have rallied, so maybe things aren't as bad, you know, we're not at the lows. So that's kind of how I have. Okay. Give me a second. I just want to make sure I'm going over chat messages. Can you articulate a bit more on how you're using closing action to lay out your scenarios for the next day? So, okay, maybe there was a bit of a misunderstanding. Maybe I didn't speak. I don't really use closing action to predict the next day. I was just saying, okay, this is what level we at, you know, given that tomorrow's monthly OPEX and we could be pinning at a major level. That's kind of where I was going with that. In terms of a day-to-day basis, I don't really make too many predictions based on the close because we have all this overnight action. Like, you know, between the close and midnight when I go to bed, I'm not really worried about the futures because the real action in the futures is around, you know, 2-3 a.m. to 6 a.m. when Europe opens. That's where a lot of the movement is, and I'll be asleep. So really, I'm not forming any opinions until I wake up and see what happens. So again, for all we know, we kind of chop tomorrow, and that gives me a chop overnight, and that tells me something. We could drop, and that tells me something. We could rally, and then, you know, like I presented some scenarios. It depends. I can't really say much more than that based on the overnight action. Okay, we have a lot of hand raised. Kyle.
Hey,
Kyle, you got
I
a
hear
question?
you twice.
I'm sorry, what?
I hear you twice.
You hear me twice.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a question? Anyone else want to type in a question, or else I'm going to wrap up? Okay, someone else had another question. Question is between a heads and shoulders and an inverse head and shoulders. For instance, right now on the 10-minute, I see both potential here. Here, you're talking about like right here, right? You're talking about like the overnight evening action. So, and here's something. I'm gonna Google head and shoulder, because this has been an issue the last few days. People keep seeing things that aren't there. A head and shoulder pattern is this. You want, I'm trying to get a good picture. This is a good picture. You want the head and shoulder pattern to be after a big uptrend and then the head and shoulders. Or inverse head and shoulder would just be the big down and then, you know, reverse. Here, we're in a 20, 30 point range. This is not anything because there's no rally here. You would have to go like up here and then do your head and shoulders. You know, this right here is chop. This is nothing. As I explained earlier, like this is not the most amazing. This was what I don't know what that is on NQ, but on the ES it was a 30-point drop. I usually want a closer to a 40-50 point drop for a Head and Shoulders or an inverse Head and Shoulders. This wasn't an amazing one, but you see how this was like a down and then the inverse Head and Shoulders and then a rally. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. So but a lot of people have been seeing things that aren't there. They're like, oh, this is a Head and Shoulders, this is an inverse Head and Shoulders, so it's not you want a big move in one direction and then the Head and Shoulders or the inverse Head and Shoulders to form, and then this is nothing. Any other questions? I'll wrap up if there's no. Steve, you have another question? No?
No,
All right,
I'm good, brother. I don't have a question.
All right, cool. Well, like I said, I'll just tomorrow, be careful. Monthly OpEx, very tricky, premiums very high. Oh, Josh, I'm not gonna be here most of tomorrow. I might be here at the open and the close, but my plan is to be, like I just said, be very careful, try not to overpay, and most likely not make a trade unless something happens. So thanks everyone. Hope this was helpful. I went through a lot really fast. So have a good one, everybody.